In this video, I'm going to show you the basics of rhetorical analysis, basically what it is. So first, what is rhetoric? Rhetoric is basically the art of persuasion. Rhetoric is an argument and the way that we make it and what we say. Rhetoric is defined as the art of effective or persuasive speaking or writing, especially the use of figures of speech or other compositional techniques. So when you think of rhetoric, you need to think about how an argument is constructed. So rhetorical analysis is a very close look at the construction of an argument and if it's effective or not. So it's basically an evaluation of an argument. Also, a rhetorical analysis looks at the way in which an argument is constructed and how it influences its audience. So the goal of any rhetorical analysis is to look at how an argument is made rather than what the argument is. You should be able to do an effective rhetorical analysis on any argument, whether you agree with it or not. What you're doing is taking a microscope to the argument itself and considering how the author said what they said in order to convince or persuade their audience. So the rhetorical situation has 5 different elements. And this is something that you need to consider when you are writing your own arguments, but it especially is important when you are doing a rhetorical analysis. We'll look at each one in an upcoming slide. The audience is, you need to ask yourself, to whom is this argument directed? The author, who composed the argument, the purpose, why was the argument created, and the medium, in what form is the argument presented, and the setting, when and where does this argument take place. So first, the audience. Who is the intended recipient? We often think that anything that we read or see is intended specifically for us, and it may be, but it's very important in a rhetorical analysis to consider who the original audience is and whether that resonates through time or history. So number 1, is the audience real or is the audience imagined? If you are watching something real time, then yes, that is the real audience. If you are watching something that was made as a blog, for example, they are kind of imagining their audience. Also, is this directed toward a single person, a small group, or perhaps a large group? It may not be very obvious to know the answer to this question, but you need to consider it. Also, are they spectators? So are they watching it? Are they listeners listening to it? Are they reading it? Or are they gathering this information in some other way? Also, you need to consider whether the audience is likely to be hostile, sympathetic, or perhaps apathetic to this. All great argument makers consider their audience carefully. If they know that their audience is going to be hostile, then they will construct their argument in a much different way. If as an audience that would be sympathetic, for example. The author. It sounds very obvious, but who composed this argument? So was it constructed by a single person or a group of people? For example, some people who speak or write are simply figureheads for a larger group. Think about speech writers and politicians, for example. They do have a group of speech writers. They may not have been the ones who actually wrote their speech. Many of them do, but some of them don't. Also, what personal factors are relevant when considering the construction of the argument? Consider how old they are, the social status, their background, family history, education or knowledge, etc. We often get this information when somebody introduces an author, or for example, if they are speaking somewhere, they introduce us to this information so that we understand, yes, I know who is speaking, so now I have much more context to the argument itself. The purpose. What is the author's goal here? Are they trying to persuade somebody to do something, to dissuade them against doing something perhaps? Or are they trying to entertain, which is obviously a very fun purpose for something that we see or hear or watch? Or are they simply informing or instructing their intended audience? Or is this perhaps a call to action? Are they trying to tell their audience to take up, go forth, do something, be productive? What about inspiring? Especially if you think of several TED Talks or inspirational speakers or personal motivators. Their entire goal is to inspire you to do something. Perhaps the only reason they're trying to make an argument is to attack somebody, or perhaps they are defending someone or defending themselves. Or maybe they would like to praise someone or something for a job well done. Medium. How is this argument delivered? This may sound obvious, but is it visual, auditory, for example? So, is it primarily visual? Is it auditory? Or is it a mix? For example, a speech that you might find on YouTube is both. You can hear it and you can see it. Now, is it in written form, like a newspaper or an essay, perhaps a written speech that you do not have a video for? Maybe it is a letter or the passage of a novel or a monologue in a play, for example. Is it primarily visual, like a commercial that you might see, a video of some kind, a print ad, a performance? Is it auditory as well? Is it a radio program or a podcast or a recording of a speech that was that happened so long ago it was before the advent of television? Now, when you're doing your rhetorical analysis, it is very important to consider these things. Just because you see speech on YouTube doesn't mean that it was primarily delivered in that manner. Maybe somebody recorded it surreptitiously and it was only meant to be seen as an audience member. Or maybe somebody is acting in a movie performing a speech that was originally only something that existed on paper. So make sure you are aware of that. Also, it could be a mixture of all of these things. The setting. The setting is so important. Where and when does the argument take place? If you are lost or you are confused, one of the first things you ask yourself is, where am I? If you cannot know where you are going if you don't know where you are to begin with. So in what time period is this argument constructed? It's very important, for example, to know where and when this argument takes place. Historically, socioeconomically, for example, there are factors that would go there. Does this take place in real time? Does it take place in an imagined time? What is the environment like here? What did the author of whatever this is have to deal with when constructing this argument? If they're making an editorial for a very small town, that would be something completely different than something that would exist in a huge nationwide newspaper, for example. So thank you for watching this essay. Excuse me. Thank you for watching this. The medium of this is an auditory moment. So thank you for watching this, and I hope to see you in the next one.